The baby wouldn't stop crying, and Achieng's heart felt like it might burst from her chest. She stood by the chipped wall of the Nairobi job center, rocking the child with a clumsy rhythm, sweat beating at her temples despite the early morning. Chill. She wasn't the baby's mother, but no one could know that. The boy, barely a year old, was bundled tightly in a blue fleece blanket that smelled faintly of powdered milk and secondhand soap. He was warm and soft against her chest, but he was also heavy. Not just in weight, he was heavy with consequence. Every gurgle he made echoed louder in her ears than in the room. Every time he wriggled or squirmed, Achieng felt like a fraud standing on a cracked stage, and the entire room was the audience waiting to see her fall. The job posting hadn't even seemed real when she first saw it. A friend had sent her a forwarded photo on WhatsApp. Hiring urgently. Admin role. Women preferred. Mothers encouraged. Interviews Wednesday. Report with child if possible. With no degree, no husband, and no money for transport, Achieng had stared at that message all night. Like it was a test she didn't know how to pass. She lived in a flat in Kariobangi, in a one-room bedsitter that smelled constantly of boiling sukuma and rusted pipes. There were no children in her life, but there were children all around her, crying through the thin walls, laughing in dusty courtyards. She had always loved them, she just never had one of her own, so she borrowed one. Her neighbor, Mama Brian, was too exhausted to ask questions. She had 3 kids, no job, and a cracked phone that barely worked. When Achieng offered to watch the baby for a few hours, just to help out, Mama Brian had nearly cried. "He's eaten. Just give him water if he fusses," she said, handing over the baby like a sack of cassava. "You're too good, Achieng." If only she knew the truth. Now, as Achieng rocked the child in the job center, she kept glancing at the woman behind the reception desk. A dark-skinned lady in a brown suit sat there, typing slowly and sipping hot chai from a tin mug. Behind her, posters lined the walls, government warnings, job listings, HIV info, and faded flyers promising computer lessons for ladies only. Achieng's name was number 11 on the list. They were calling people in pairs. She had time to steady herself, but her knees kept shaking. She whispered softly to the baby, "Shh, Brian, please, just 1 hour." The child, not Brian, not hers, blinked up at her with sleepy eyes, then let out a whimper. She cradled him tighter. Around her, the air was thick with unspoken desperation. Women in second-hand blazers, men with scuffed shoes, someone coughing into a torn handkerchief. This wasn't just a job center. It was a place people came to beg with dignity. One woman, 2 seats away, was breastfeeding a real baby. Achieng looked away quickly. The shame crawled up her throat like something living. She had prepared for this moment all night. She had chosen her best blouse, blue with white flowers, and ironed it using a charcoal iron from a neighbor. Her skirt was too tight, but it made her posture straighter. She wore the only closed shoes she owned. Her CV was in a plastic folder, neat and crisp. It said she had 3 years clerical experience, which she didn't, and basics, IT skills, which she barely had, but she had learned how to lie without blinking. Life had taught her. "Number 11, the receptionist called. Achieng flinched. The baby stirred. She stood up, adjusted the baby on her hip, and walked stiffly toward the corridor. Every step felt heavier than the last. The hallway was painted, yellow, but the light made everything look pale and tired. She was led to a room with a door marked Recruitment Officer, Mr. Mwangi. Inside was a man in his mid-30s, well-groomed, eyes sharp behind rectangular glasses. He looked up briefly, then motioned for her to sit. His desk was neat. A small Kenyan flag stood in the corner, and next to it, a photo of a smiling woman and 2 kids. Achieng sat down, gently bouncing the baby in her lap. "Your name?" he asked, eyes flicking from the child to her face. "Achieng." Achieng Atieno. Your child? He asked, tapping his pen. She nodded without hesitation. Yes, Brian. He's 10 months. Mr. Mwangi looked at her for a moment, then scribbled something on a notepad. This position is in an office. Filing, calls, welcoming visitors. But it helps to understand family life. We're building a team of women who can multitask. Mothers tend to be grounded. Achieng forced a smile. Yes, sir. I know how to manage time. I'm very organized. The baby cooed, then hiccuped. Has he eaten? Yes. Just before we came, she lied quickly. All right, I won't keep you long, he said, leaning back. Tell me, what's the hardest thing you've overcome? Achieng blinked. Her throat tightened. She could have said, hunger. Loneliness. The time she sold her phone to buy charcoal. The time she walked from Donholm to Kariobangi at night, because she had no fare. The time she went for a cleaning job and was told she was too dark for the client's taste. Instead, she looked him straight in the eye and said, I've learned how to keep going, even when everything says stop. There was a silence between them, not awkward, just thick. Mr. Mwangi nodded. Slowly. He stood up. We'll be in touch. Thank you, Achieng whispered. She stood, adjusted the baby again, and walked out, her back straight, heart pounding, and tears threatening at the edges of her eyes. Outside, in the sun, she finally exhaled. She had made it through the interview, but she had no idea what was coming next. By the time Achieng got back to Kariobangi, the sun had begun to fall like a tired man leaning against a wall. The air was dry, full of dust and distant smells. Fried mandazi, burning plastic, a neighbor's cheap perfume. She returned the baby to Mama Brian, kissing his forehead one last time as if it might erase what she had done. How was he? The mother asked, clearly exhausted from her day of chasing 2 other toddlers through the corridors of the flats. He was perfect, Achieng replied, forcing a smile. He even slept a little. Mama Brian reached for the baby. You're a blessing, Achieng. I don't even know how to thank you. But Achieng didn't want thanks. She wanted to disappear. The guilt clung to her like dust on a wet floor. She had used another woman's child like a prop. She had lied, in broad daylight, with confidence, and worst of all, part of her felt proud. She went home, closed her metal door, and collapsed onto her mattress. Her back ached from the tension. Her arms still remembered the weight of the child. She hadn't eaten all day, but the thought of food made her stomach turn. Her mind was stuck in that interview room, in Mr. Mwangi's eyes. How they studied her, how he paused when she said she kept going even when everything said stop. Would he see through her? 3 days passed. 3 days of pacing, praying, pretending. Not to wait by the phone. On the 4th day, it rang. It was a Safaricom number she didn't recognize. Her heart raced as she answered. Hello? Hello, is this Achieng Atieno? The voice asked. It was calm, male, formal. Yes. Speaking. This is Mr. Mwangi from the job center. Are you available to speak for a moment? Her voice nearly broke. Yes, of course. We've reviewed your interview. We appreciate your time and interest in the position. She held her breath. Unfortunately, he continued, the admin post has been filled. Silence. Oh, Achieng whispered. Okay, thank you for the opportunity. But, he interrupted, I would like to meet you again, in person, if you're available Monday morning. Her heartbeat doubled. Yes, I'm available. Good. Same office. 10 o'clock. He ended the call without another word. On Monday, Achieng wore the same blouse and skirt. She had no other suitable clothes. This time, she didn't carry the baby. She didn't ask to borrow him. She simply walked into the job center with her back straight and her truth ready to be punished. Mr. Mwangi was waiting in the same room, same desk, same shirt. He gestured for her to sit. There was no paperwork on the desk this time. Just a cup of tea. "I wanted to speak to you privately," he said. Achieng nodded, her eyes lowered. "I know the child you brought was not yours." The word sliced clean through her. She didn't respond. Couldn't. Mr. Mwangi leaned back in his chair. "I checked the interview footage. It's standard procedure. We keep recordings. Then I did something extra. I asked the receptionist. She said she saw you adjusting the baby awkwardly, like someone unfamiliar with him. I looked at your ID details. No birth certificate attached. Nothing to indicate maternity." Achieng sat frozen, her hands clenched in her lap. "Then I went a step further," he said quietly. "I visited your flat block yesterday. Spoke to one of your neighbors, an older man. He told me you live alone. That you help watch other people's kids sometimes, especially Mama Brian's." Achieng's voice came out dry, shaking. "I'm sorry." He didn't say anything. She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to deceive you. I wanted the job so badly. The notice said you prefer mothers. I didn't think you'd even look at me if I came alone." Mr. Mwangi finally spoke. "Do you know why we said that? Why we encourage mothers?" Achieng shook her head. "Because they fight harder. They're grounded. They show up even when the world is against them. But it turns out, that has nothing to do with having a child." He paused. "You came with a borrowed baby. That was a lie. But the reason you did it? That was the truth." Tears burned in Achieng's eyes. She didn't wipe them away. Mr. Mwangi sighed. "The admin job was real, but it's full now. Still, after your interview, I started thinking, there's another department. We work with local NGOs to support women like you. Jobless, resourceful, tough. It's community-based, not office work. A pilot project for women who can talk to others in the neighborhood, help train them in soft skills, connect them with services." Achieng blinked. "You want me to work there?" "Yes. If you want it. No child required. Just you." A full breath escaped her chest. "I want it," she said. "So much." Mr. Mwangi smiled. "Just slightly." "Good. Come in tomorrow. We'll start your paperwork." She stood up, thanked him softly, and walked out with tears in her eyes. But this time, they were different. They were tears of something that felt like grace. Back home, Mama Brian was cooking outside on a charcoal jiko. "How did it go?" she asked. Achieng smiled and sat beside her. "I didn't get the job I wanted," she said honestly. "But I got the one I needed." Mama Brian laughed. "That's how God works. He hears everything, even lies whispered in hope." Achieng smiled. For the first time in a long time, her smile was real. The new job was not glamorous. It was field work. Walking through dusty neighborhoods, knocking on doors, talking to struggling women, and helping them fill out forms they barely understood. It was navigating gossip, mistrust, and pain. But Achieng didn't complain. Every time she felt tired, she remembered what it felt like to carry a baby that wasn't hers and lie with a straight face. Now she was earning an honest living. Not much, but enough to eat without begging. Enough to buy her own bar soap. Enough to send Mama Brian's kids small sweets sometimes, just to say thank you without words. By her second month in the role, she'd become known in the neighborhoods. People called her Madam Achieng, which made her laugh at first. She wasn't anyone's madam, just a woman who got lucky, then honest. But one day, that name became a target. It was a Friday afternoon. She had just returned from a long day of household visits in Dandora. Her flats in Kariobangi were alive with their usual chaos. Kids shouting, radios battling for attention, two women arguing about borrowed water. She was walking toward her door when she heard the voice. "You think you're better than us. Now?" she turned. A woman stood across the courtyard, middle-aged, with angry eyes and a bright red headscarf tied tight across her forehead. Achieng blinked. "Sorry." The woman stepped forward. "I said, you think you're better than us now? Walking around with your clipboard, your NGO badge, helping strangers. But lying to get a job?" The words froze Achieng in place. "I know what you did." The woman continued, her voice rising. "You borrowed Mama Brian's baby. You lied at that office. I saw you. And now you're walking around like you're a saint." People had begun to look. A few neighbors peeked out their windows. Children paused mid-game. Achieng felt a wave of shame crawl up her spine. She opened her mouth to speak, but the woman cut her off. "You want to help women?" she sneered. "Start by helping yourself. Stop pretending you're clean." And at that she turned and walked away, her red scarf bouncing with every step. Achieng stood there, the courtyard suddenly colder than it should have been. That night, she couldn't sleep. The woman's words replayed over and over in her mind. Not just what she said, but the way she said it, with bitterness, with something more than anger, something personal. The next morning, Achieng went looking for her. She found the woman sitting outside a kiosk near the end of the flats, peeling mangoes into a bucket. "Can we talk?" Achieng asked quietly. The woman didn't look up. "Why?" "Because I need to understand." The woman tossed a peel aside and finally looked at her. Up close, her eyes were tired, rimmed red like someone who had cried too many times. "You really don't know me, do you?" she asked. Achieng shook her head. "No, I'm sorry." The woman wiped her hands on her skirt. "My name is Millicent. I used to work at the same center. Same job, field officer, helping women, filling forms, all of it." Achieng sat on the edge of a bench. "What happened?" "They fired me," Millicent said. 2 years ago, for a breach of protocol. I was late on reports, missed deadlines. They said I was unprofessional." "I'm sorry," Achieng said softly. "You know why I was late?" Millicent asked. "Because my husband left, just disappeared. One day we had a family, the next day, nothing. I had 3 kids to feed, no house help, no money for daycare. I brought my youngest on field work, in a lasso, strapped to my back. Sometimes he cried in the middle of a meeting. One day the supervisor came without warning, heard the baby scream, wrote me up." Achieng's heart dropped. I tried to explain. Told them it was either bring the baby or don't come. They didn't care. I got 1 warning, then dismissal, the red headscarf, the bitterness, the anger. It all made sense now. Millicent wasn't just angry at Achieng. She was angry at what Achieng represented, the chance she lost, the life she couldn't salvage. "I'm sorry," Achieng said again. "Truly," Millicent scoffed. "Save your sorry. You think it matters now?" "No," Achieng said, her voice steady. "But maybe it helps to say it. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I had to be a mother to be seen. I lied because I was desperate. And I hate that it worked. Because people like you, who told the truth, paid the price." Millicent didn't respond for a long time. She just stared into her mango bucket, then said quietly, "It always feels like we're being tested for wounds. Whoever bleeds the most wins." Achieng nodded. "But maybe we should be healing each other instead." Millicent looked at her. For the first time, she didn't look angry, just tired. "You still have that NGO contact?" she asked. "Yes." "Can you get me a meeting?" "I can try." That night, Achieng wrote an email to Mr. Mwangi. The next day, Millicent sat in a meeting room again. No baby on her back this time, no lies. Just truth. And a woman who had once borrowed a child to survive, now helping another survive without borrowing anything. Sometimes full circles don't feel clean, they feel bruised, but they still turn. Rain fell like whispers against the rooftops of Kariobangi, the kind of rain that didn't flood, didn't roar, just kept falling, as if the sky had things to say, but no one to listen. Achieng stood by her window, watching the gray blur soak the dusty courtyard. Inside her tiny bedsitter, steam rose from her chipped kettle. The room smelled of tea leaves, warm bread, and fresh beginnings. It had been 6 weeks since she'd spoken with Mr. Mwangi about Millicent. 6 weeks since the Achieng confrontation in the courtyard and everything that came after. And yet, those 6 weeks had felt like years. Millicent had been offered a probation position with a partner NGO. It wasn't as secure as before, but it was a foot back inside the world that once spit her out. Achieng had stood next to her that day as she signed the forms, both of them not quite smiling, not quite crying, just breathing in something that felt like dignity. But not everything could be fixed. Not all wounds were waiting for closure. Some simply wanted to be seen. That Monday, Achieng received an unexpected call. "Is this Achieng Atieno?" asked a gentle voice. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "This is from Sauti ya Mama, the women's radio program. We received your name from Mr. Mwangi." Achieng frowned. "Okay. He said you might be open to sharing your story." She paused. "What story?" "Your journey, the job interview, the baby, the truth." Achieng's heart stopped for a moment. "We're doing a special episode, Desperation and Dignity, Women Who Fought to Survive. We want your voice." She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes drifted to the corner of her room, to the same blue plastic folder that once held her fake CV, now filled with real field reports and training. "Manuals. I'll think about it," she said softly. The next day, she sat in front of a microphone at a small studio in town. The walls were lined with foam, the air cold from too much air conditioning, the room silent except for the occasional beep of the mixer. The host, a calm woman with kind eyes, smiled. "Just speak your truth, that's all." Achieng looked at the mic, at the blinking red light. She took a deep breath. "I didn't steal the baby," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I borrowed him like he was a piece of paper, like he was a stamp I needed to get through the door." She paused. "I was told the job favored mothers. I wasn't one. I had no qualifications, no money, and I was losing hope. So I did something wrong. But I didn't do it to hurt anyone. I did it because I was tired of being invisible." The host leaned in slightly, listening without interrupting. "I held that child like my life depended on it, because in a way it did. And when the truth came out, the man in charge didn't punish me. He didn't shame me. He saw the human in me." Tears rose to her eyes. "Desperation doesn't make you dishonest. It just means you've run out of options. It doesn't mean you have no values. It means you've been stretched past them." She paused again. "I don't regret the lesson, but I regret the lie." The host touched her hand gently. "Thank you." The radio episode aired that Sunday night. People all across Nairobi heard it. Women in salons, matatu drivers on evening shifts, mothers cooking ugali by paraffin lamps. Even a few girls in university dorms, listening in stunned silence. One of them was Mama Brian. She had known the pieces of the story, but not all of it. Not the shame. Not the fear. Not the pain Achieng had carried alone. She knocked on Achieng's door the next day with tears in her eyes and a small bag of maize flour. "You didn't owe me the truth," she said, "but I'm glad you told it to the world." They sat and drank tea together for the first time in weeks. The silence between them healed now. Later that week, Achieng returned to the job center. Not for work, but to help run a new orientation session. Mr. Mwangi greeted her at the door. "You've caused quite a storm," he said, handing her a printed flyer. "Applications have doubled since the broadcast." She smiled shyly. "I didn't mean to be famous." "You're not famous," he said. "You're just a mirror. People are seeing themselves in you." The flyer read, "Community Empowerment Program, open to all women, no child required." Achieng looked at the bold letters, then up at the line of women forming by the door. Some held babies, others didn't. Some looked proud, some looked terrified, but none looked invisible. That evening, Achieng walked back home through the muddy paths of her neighborhood. Children splashed in puddles. A boda zoomed past, playing loud reggae. The air smelled like chapati and kerosene. She reached her door and paused. There, on her doorstep, was a small box. She picked it up carefully. Inside, wrapped in soft cloth, was a tiny blue fleece. Baby blanket, the one she had used during the interview. There was a note. "You forgot this. Thought you might want to keep it. Mama Brian." Achieng pressed the blanket to her chest and closed her eyes. It was soft, familiar, a reminder of the lie that saved her, the truth that freed her, and the story that helped others find their voice.